Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're going to be discussing the founder James A. Bayard. Now, James A. Bayard is probably a name you don't recognize, but he was at the heart of two extremely important events in early American history. So Bayard, a little backstory, was a young lawyer from Delaware who at just 29 years old was elected to the United States House of Representatives. Shortly thereafter, there was the famous election of 1800, which I'll remind you was when Thomas Jefferson and his vice presidential running mate, Aaron Burr, were tied for the vote at a time where whoever got the most was president and whoever got second most was vice president. And this tie went to the House of Representatives to decide who the president would be. And the House had ballot after ballot after ballot, and they remained tied. Now, many Federalists were considering voting for Aaron Burr to break the tie in his favor. And they wanted to do this because even though he was running as a Democratic Republican with Thomas Jefferson, Burr had previously associated with the Federalists, so they thought his views were more in line with theirs. But they were a little skeptical that he was just a man who was seeking power, as famously Alexander Hamilton also believed. Now, if you see the movies or the play Hamilton, you would be led to believe that everyone ran to Hamilton and say, "Hey man, what do we do about this?" And Hamilton shouted from the rooftops, "Vote for Jefferson, he's my political nemesis, but Aaron Burr is not to be trusted." While Hamilton did have this attitude, he was in New York City, and the capital had just moved to Washington, so he was most certainly not there. What he did was he sent a letter. And why do I bring this up? Because today's subject, James A. Bayard, was the recipient of this letter from Alexander Hamilton, which said in regards to if Aaron Burr were elected, and I quote, "Let us not be responsible for the evils which in all probability will follow." Yeah, harsh. He basically was saying, if we decide to go for Burr, sure, Jefferson is going to do things we don't want to do, but at least he's doing them because he believes they're for the best of intentions. Aaron Burr's going to do things we don't want him to do because he's looking out for Aaron Burr. So Bayard took this letter and advice from a man who was still kind of the leader of the Federalist Party after his affair was published famously. He kind of stepped back and was not as up front in the party anymore, but now that John Adams was clearly out of the way, Hamilton was still trusted politically by his friends and associates. So the Federalists did turn to him, and Bayard went in to his Federalist counterparts and said, "Hey guys, guess what? This is what Hamilton said," and they were like, "Okay, let's do that." And as we all know, Thomas Jefferson went on to be elected as President of the United States. Aaron Burr got the consolation of being Vice President for 4 years, but this is not a story about Burr, this is about James A. Bayard. Bayard soon thereafter would be appointed to the Senate to fill a vacancy that had arisen, and he would end up being reelected and stay almost a decade as a member of the United States Senate. Now, the second important event with Bayard was involved with was the War of 1812. Now, James Madison had started this war, and Bayard, as a Federalist, even though the Federalist Party was dying, Bayard was against the war. But, unlike most Federalists, when the war broke out, Bayard threw his support behind the president, because he was the type of man who thought to put country ahead of personal beliefs, so to speak. That's not the right way to say it. He put country ahead of self. We'll leave it at that. So he did support the war. And because he was a Federalist who started supporting a Democratic Republican president, well, Madison really liked him. And when the time came to negotiate a treaty of peace, there was a delegation of 5 people selected as a commission to go over and negotiate that peace. And James A. Bayard was the Federalist selected for that commission. So he went to the Netherlands and he helped negotiate and sign the Treaty of Ghent. And the Treaty of Ghent was a peace with Great Britain that has kept the two nations at peace for over 200 years. Additionally, this is considered the Second American Revolution by many, and he helped end hostilities between two English-speaking countries that, as I said, have been friends ever since. Now, I get a lot of crap because a lot of the videos I make, the people I talk about seem to die young. This was 200 years ago, so everyone I talk about on this channel is going to end up not alive anymore. Bayard also has a sad story. While he was in Netherlands, James Madison actually appointed him minister to Russia. But Bayard decided, I'd rather go back home. He was getting a little older. He said, I'd prefer to go back home. On the ride back, he gets sick. He gets off the boat, and fortunately he does make it back to the United States and does get home. And then, just 5 days later, passes away. Bummer. Sorry to bring you down, but it is an interesting fact about this extraordinarily interesting founder who I only talked a little bit about. He was involved in many more things. I will leave, as always, a link to my article I wrote about James Bayard in the comment section below, so please check it out if you want to learn a little bit more about him. While you're down there, you should definitely hit like, and if you're new here, you just stumbled onto this video, please hit subscribe. I put out videos about obscure founding parents of the United States 5 days a week. And if you want to support this channel, please check out my Patreon page, where recently I discussed my new flag, the Bennington flag. Thank you so much. I'll be back with a new video tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you then.